Philadelphia.
Here in our
Maybe that's home territory for some people. This is a very different equation there, where I can tell you from my experience last weekend, this is the kryptonite for mono green aggro. Just a combination of Priest of the Forgotten Gods, Claim the Firstborn, lots of things like Cauldron Familiar, Witch's Oven, standing in the way of these big, dumb green animals. This is a recipe for success against the green aggro deck.
Right. Priest of the Forgotten Gods coming down for Tim Milner on turn 2 is going to be colossal. There aren't a ton of ways for mono green to efficiently answer that before, say, turn 4, when it feels like the damage is done with this card.
Oh, and we already have the engine coming together nicely for Tim Milner. Priest and Midnight Reaper keeping the cards flowing. Looking at Corey's hand, he's on a slightly bigger build of this mono green deck. We see 3 Vivians of various descriptions hanging out in his hand there.
Yeah, Vivian, very strong in these matchups, just being able to grow creatures and actually provide some much-needed interaction to these green decks.
I know that you wrote about all the various ways you might use Vivian Monsters Advocate when it was previewed over on StarCityGames.com. This isn't really the kind of shell that we all envisioned it showing up in, though.
Well, this is definitely less combo-oriented than one would expect with Vivian, but the fact that you can just get so far ahead on the battlefield with it just makes it incredible. You just have a Vivian, let's even just say you hard cast a Gem Razor or a big Stone Coil Serpent. You just steal something else that's huge. Oh,
Lord, and Claim the Firstborn, snagging that Lovestruck Beast. That's going to no 1/1 there on Tim Milner's side of the board, but that's perfectly fine. He will feed that to the Priest of Forgotten Gods, eat the 1/1 that Corey does have, draw 2 cards in the process, and you're seeing play out in action here why this is a nightmare matchup for mono green aggro.
Right, and this is what we were talking about in our pregame show. Look at how strong Priest of Forgotten Gods is. It's able to play both interaction and pressure. That double duty is just the bread and butter of successful aggro decks right now.
And there is a 1/1 in Cauldron Familiar and a second Midnight Reaper. So any activation of Priest of Forgotten Gods is just going to be like a time twister for Tim Milner here.
Right, and you can see Baumeister just committing his turn rather than developing any Planeswalkers, just a Grizzly Bear of a Stone Coil Serpent and getting that Priest off the table.
And Tim draws 2 cards in the process. It's like he cast a Bellatrix, but didn't have to pay for it or sacrifice anything. He just got it all for free. He cast a bill. Yeah.
And having double Midnight Reaper with this Woe Strider, a Cauldron Familiar, there's so many moving pieces for Milner right now. It's so hard to imagine Baumeister coming back this game. The snowball's gotten too big.
All the Vivians in the world not going to get him out of this one.
And you know what? That is all Baumeister seems to have going for him at the moment.
Could he gem raise his own Stone Coil Serpent, just conceding style? I guess he could concede anyway. So Tim Milner picking up a quick game run in very impressive fashion. And we see those side effects, Primal Might and more Ramfluge, jumping into the deck as soon as possible here for Corey Baumeister.
Right, you can just see him screaming for interaction, grabbing it, throwing it in the library as quickly as possible. He knows that you need to be able to get that Priest of Forgotten Gods off the battlefield, or it will single-handedly run away with a game.
Now, Emma, we said this mono green build is going a little bit larger. We see 2 copies of the Great Henge here in Corey's main deck. And that's a card that Cedric had to sit Corey down with after last week and be like, Corey, look, okay, let's have a talk about these Great Henges. It looks like Corey has not taken that advice on board, and I'm sure that will be a sticking point in Corey's quarterly review.
Right, and as we saw last game, how good this deck was at keeping creatures on the battlefield. I'm sure this Great Henge is going to be far more castable. Well, see, look how great the Great Henge is here. It is, it'll be fine.
I guess there are some 9-drops in this better than. I'm not quite sure which ones exactly, but I'm sure they exist.
I would rather have the Great Henge than Dead Drop.
Oh, yeah. See that? Emma, come on. That's a 10-drop. Come on now. Okay,
Bringer of the White Dawn. I would rather have the Great Henge, even if the 2 combo well.
What have you got a Mindslaver out there? At that point, we can concoct all these scenarios, but Buckeye Troll out here for Corey on turn 2, and Noxious Grass taking it down before the mana up to protect it from the Noxious Grass, and Corey just has to pass the turn again, so and there's Priest of Forgotten Gods. It's going to be real hard for Corey to stick a creature in this game, but the first of 2 now copies of Questing Beast. Those are cards that could very easily run away with the game if Tim doesn't have a good follow-up.
Yeah, that is one of the creatures that has its own evasion that gets past a lot of the creatures in this Rakdos Sacrifice deck. Without a Woe Strider or a Midnight Reaper, we're going to see Tim struggle to actually interact with Questing Beast.
Yeah, and there's 2 more creatures, including a second Priest of Forgotten Gods. So those can devour the Questing Beast now. And yeah, we're going to see Questing Beast go down, 2 mana and a card for Tim. We'll see if he has a good follow-up. And Mayhem Devil will do it. That will count.
Oh yeah, that is a great follow-up here.
So let's see. Corey could cast a Great Henge if he had 4 more mana sources. Instead, got to consider his other options. Vivien Monster's Advocate, if you can get that out slightly earlier, make this steady stream of 3/3s, play some creatures off the top, that's good insurance against Priest of Forgotten Gods. As it is, though, I'm not sure if it can really stabilize for Corey on this board.
Right, this turn really just feels like a situation that's more of a developmental turn. We see Vivien being cast both because it's more mana efficient, and if Corey rips a land, Questing Beast plus Crash Through or Ram Through is going to be able to actually kill this Priest of Forgotten Gods.
Oh, and that elk has switched sides. It's betrayed its master, and yeah, they will team up. It will team up with the Mayhem Devil to kill Vivien, and now, if Tim has another creature, can sacrifice that and the beast or the elk. Yeah. Oh, Village Rites. Wow. Doesn't even need the second creature. He can find one off that Village Rites, though. He sure can. There's a second Mayhem Devil.
And wow. This is what we call reach.
Dear Lord. And I guess that Questing Beast can ram through. Really, any one of those creatures is a appealing and necessary target for that ram through here.
And now we're going to see a situation where, do you think Corey even casts the ram through?
I don't know if he can afford to.
No, you just kind of get blown out here. You're behind so many resources. Oh, no.
I was going to say, Questing Beast gets around Claim the Firstborn, doesn't get around Act of Treason.
Well, bright side, Priest of Forgotten Gods still online here.
Yeah, Act of Treason and a Sacrifice Outlet, a staple of core set limited formats across the years, and we're going to see it do nice work against Corey Baumeister for Tim Milner.
All right, and after this exchange, I imagine Corey's going to have one turn for the Great Henge to single-handedly turn this game around.
All right, we got 2 life. Let's go. Let's do it. I have faith. We can make it happen.
Okay, all kidding aside, another copy of Vivien off the top of the library is a strong enough card that I could see it actually stabilizing the battlefield for Corey here.
Oh, we're kicking the Great Henge into the long grass even further?
Oh, yeah, no, this is not the turn for that.
Was there ever a turn for that, Emma?
It's complicated. Back to Milner.
Oh, and here's Gigant of the Wellspring, which would have snuck into Tim Milner's hand just without our notice at some point, but that's a 5/5. That'll rumble with anything on this board.
Ooh,
okay.
Milner's really developing a battlefield here. Or excuse me, Baumeister is really developing, just kind of being able to turtle up, play a little bit more defensively in a way that I suspect this Vivien, this Great Henge, can run away with the game.
And enough creatures have died now that Scavenger is going to get real big real fast.
Oh yeah, this is a situation where Milner needs to find something like Claim the Firstborn to deal with it ASAP.
2 more creatures hit the graveyard here for both players. And yeah, this is a turn. We might be in a spot now where if Tim... Fable Passage, I guess those do trigger... That does trigger Mayhem Devil, but he's going to need a good follow-up here. Two triggers upstairs for the Mayhem Devil. So Tim putting Corey back down to 7. There are a few sequences here where, if he casts all Lockthwains into the right card, then Corey could be on the back foot again. But Corey may have stabilized. I'm touching the wood here as I say it, but he might be looking good.
Yeah, this is a situation where Milner needs to find something off the top, or all of the cards on Baumeister's side are things that can snowball a serious advantage and allow Baumeister to end up coming back here.
And this game, a great advertisement for Vivien Monster's Advocate. 5 mana, not easy to reach in this deck. You need to make sure that the payoff is high for it, but it sure looks like it is based on this game.
Right, and this is a deck that plays to the battlefield. As long as you can check things like Priest of the Forgotten Gods, then you're going to be successful.
Mobilized District on top, unfortunately not allowing Corey to set off some ridiculous chain of creatures on this turn, but we can just get aggressive.
Oh.
2 Vigilant Beasts and a Scavenging Ooze heading into combat here.
Well, I imagine the Ooze single-handedly is lethal, so it's important to get in front of that.
Yeah, that's what we like to call a chump block, and that Mayhem Devil will itself become even more food for the Ooze.
And look at the fact that these beasts have vigilance. This is another layer of why Vivien is so good, is these beasts are effectively just customizable and able to pick the fight that they want to fight.
And what's really nice about that too is there's no way that Corey can get punked out of this game by, let's say, a Claim the Firstborn or an Adder Trees and taking that Scavenging Ooze. There's always going to be a Beast Black to block it in the worst case.
Right, and look at this, Village Rites, sacrificing the chump blocking Mayhem Devil to give Milner some more resources. This is a way for him to come ahead and assemble some sort of combo that can actually get there.
God Eternal Bonnet would be nice on this board, is all I'll say about this. But Worst Rider, not too bad in its own right. Witch's Oven as well, giving Corey another chump blocker for the Scavenging Ooze, maybe get another flurry of triggers in, but I don't think he can piece together a lethal series on this turn.
No, I really don't think so, especially with that Scavenging Ooze representing probably 8 life. Oh, and Great Henge being another 4 life, so I with between it and the Ooze, I know the number of creatures in the graveyard is finite, but as long as this game is gone and as creature-based as both of these decks can be, I really don't see that Ooze running out of food anytime soon.
Absolutely, and I don't know how essential the Great Henge was to stabilizing this game compared to Vivien, but that life buffer really shuts off the only way that Tim could piece together a kill on this board, I think.
Right, I completely agree with that.
And now I want to see Corey go off. I want to see a chain of 6 different creatures all coming into play with counters, drawing more cards, casting more spells. Corey can really make a lot happen on this turn, depending on what he sees here.
Wow, is this Ooze running out of food already?
Poor thing. Well, this is just Tim's graveyard. We haven't even started on Corey's yet.
Oh, wow.
There's still a Questing Beast there, ready to jump into the maw of that Scavenging Ooze.
Oh, yeah, look. Nature doesn't let a single scrap of bone go to waste. One word off the flavor text. I'm positive the joke would have landed if I had just gotten it right, obviously.
Or if I knew more flavor text. Yeah, that's the other option. Don't sell yourself short here.
Look, this is textbook why you're a 3-time open champion and I am a no-time open champion.
Unfortunately, I don't know the flavor textbook, which really would have come in handy here. But there's going to be a Questing Beast with Lovestruck Beast in reserve. All the beasts coming out to play here.
Ooh, when the opponent activates Great Henge with a Vivien in play, you've got to feel horrified.
And Tim has seen enough here. He knows that's it. And so we will go to a game 3 here between Corey Baumeister on Mono Green Aggro, Tim Milner on Rite of Sacrifice. Do you think play versus draw is going to affect the sideboarding here for Corey or for Tim when we get to him?
I definitely don't think it will for Corey. The big thing here that we saw Corey do is just lean into more answers, specifically to try and check Priest of Forgotten Gods. And the emphasis on needing to answer the Priest has not changed in the slightest. The thing that I could expect to change for Milner is Milner, while on the play, is going to naturally be down at least 1 resource by virtue of being on the play versus not having that extra draw on the first turn and so on. But Milner is going to have a mana advantage, which means that rather than trying to play a more reactive strategy with things like Noxious Grasp, we could expect Milner to lean a bit more into just trying to pressure Baumeister's life total.
Yeah, Corey needs to fight down those priests and those Mayhem Devils, but that's a lot harder on the draw, where you play your creature, you need it to survive and untap so you can have it fight. If Tim has a removal spell, you're just on the back foot. You might not get a good chance to use those fight cards.
Right, you actually need to develop something onto the battlefield before your fight spells have a text box, and that's a pretty steep order on the draw for this green deck.
And we see one of the better cards in the matchup here in Scavenging Ooze. We see those 2 forms of interaction, but this is kind of highlighting what we're saying, where if there's 1 copy of Noxious Grasp for the Scavenging Ooze, this hand does absolutely nothing.
Right, and you can see Corey tanking because he knows these are the best cards in the matchup, and he's just going to lean on the top of his library to make sure that it doesn't spell doom for him.
Emma, there it is. The Henge.
Oh, the great Henge. Thank
the greatest
you
of
very
Henges.
much. Ooh,
And
and here's Milner's great Henge, otherwise known as Priest of Forgotten Gods.
that one a little cheaper and a little stronger on this board state. And Vivian Arbo Range of Akuri, another example of a card which is fantastic if you're ahead, but not getting you back into the game if you're behind.
And we see Corey going ahead and jamming this copy of Scavenging Ooze. I'm a little surprised to see him do it that way, but because Priest of Forgotten Gods can just be activated at instant speed, there isn't a huge upside to saving it and just developing it on turn 3.
And there is Noxious Grasp. Yeah, you might have seen Corey wait and then try to cast the Ooze and a Primal Might in the same turn, but yeah, against an instant speed removal spell, you want to get out of the way now so that if you do draw another creature, that line's open to you. You can imagine on this turn, he finds a Bug-Eye Troll, finds another Scavenging Ooze, can fight the Priest. That's a good line, but instead, just another Forest for Corey Baumeister.
Right, and having to skip the turn here, he's going to fall so far behind.
Well, there's another Scavenging Ooze. Okay, so that will, I guess, force Tim's hand on the Priest of Forgotten Gods, but it's still not ideal, because if he goes for the Primal Might, that's eating up a card Tim knows that he can just sacrifice with the Priest in response.
Right, this is really just feels like a rock and a hard place for Baumeister. You can see him developing this Vivian on the battlefield to try and make something else happen, but I'm not confident in this line.
This Vivian currently is poised to survive the turn, but just a Mayhem Devil or Dreadhorde Butcher or really anything else could change that very quickly for Tim Milner.
Right, there are a lot of things that just make this go wrong, but if Baumeister just knows the Scavenging Ooze is dead on arrival, you have to do something that can snowball into a bigger sequence of turns.
And there is the Mayhem Devil, and that's a scary card if you're a Corey Baumeister fan. I think that's going to spell the end of this game.
Yeah, and oh, look at this. How do you feel about an upstairs attack from this Woe Strider?
I love it. Yeah, if you think that, you can contain a fight with the Vivian, and also if Vivian doesn't have anything worthwhile to get, then sure, leave that thing there. What was it going to do for him?
Yeah, absolutely. Just having a way to contain creatures on the battlefield really invalidates what this Vivian is able to do.
Yeah, and Pearl Collector can offer a little insurance, I guess, following up with the Scavenging Use, but it's a 1/1, and Tim can easily pick that off in advance and then use the Priest to deal with the follow-up.
Right, that's the scariest part about this Pelt Collector, or this Mayhem Devil, rather, is previously Pelt Collector would have been perfect. You go Collector, Scavenging Ooze, minus Vivian on Scavenging Ooze, targeting Priest. Then, if anything happens to the Scavenging Ooze, you can either sacrifice the Pelt Collector to protect it from the Priest, or to protect the Ooze from the Priest, rather. But as it stands, Mayhem Devil is the perfect thing to just, with that first Pelt Collector trigger on the stack, pick it off and then force Corey to sacrifice this Ooze.
Now, Tim does not have too many excess creatures or resources here, so Corey can chain the Pelt Collector into the Ooze, into a fight card, and force Tim to either gobble up his own board or let Corey do it for him. So Corey not quite out of this game just yet, but still going to be an uphill battle for sure.
Right, just having the ability to dictate the pace of things is so strong for this Rakdos sacrifice deck.
And so now this Priest can, I imagine, eat the Woe Strider and the lowly 0/1 Goat token here, leaving the Mayhem Devil around, getting 2 triggers off of that, eating the Scavenging Ooze, and everything coming up to Milner here.
I think the big question is if you want to offer up the Woe Strider to the Scavenging Ooze, which is the biggest reason to look at maybe sacrificing Mayhem Devil instead.
That makes a lot of sense. It's, I guess, a question of escaping Woe Strider on a future turn, having that sack outlet around, versus Mayhem Devil, which typically that's the card you most want in board states like this, but maybe a closer call than normal here.
Right, and we can see Milner going ahead, sacrificing that Woe Strider as a result of the fact that he missed a land drop before. Who's to say if he'll even get to escape at this game? And
now, Corey can play Power Collector, load it up with counters from the Vivian, and have the Primal Might fight the Priest of Forgotten Gods, or even trade with the Mayhem Devil. So he's kind of almost-ish stabilizing here, but again, if Tim has any good follow-up, then he'll be on the back foot once more.
Right, and this is a spot where, with this Primal Might here, that is going to get to actually mop things up. Very well played turn from Baumeister. I am incredibly impressed that he found a way to navigate this game to a point where he could deal with that Priest of Forgotten Gods.
And that Vivian activation opens the door for this Primal Might, and you can imagine previously, Tim could have sacrificed the Priest to the Witch's Oven, ping down the Pelt Collector, and shut off that line, but that relies on that's worried about Corey having exactly a second Primal Might, which he did, and he set that out perfectly so that he could avoid that line from Tim.
Right, and just a lot of that is just kind of playing a sort of numbers game, figuring out if Tim is just Baumeister is just trying to get anything on the battlefield, and I can certainly see on Milner's side why you would be led to believe that.
There's a Priest. Now Corey is crossing his fingers there's no follow-up, add to trees and claim the firstborn, anything like that. Looks like he's in the clear for this turn for now. But,
right, just having a Cauldron Familiar is actually going to be pretty good here with 2 food. If Milner can just retain priority and sacrifice the cat, retain priority, sacrifice both foods, that'll pick off the Pelt Collector.
Oh, but look at this. Corey can put 2 counters on the Pelt Collector, then play a Great Hand, use that to cast a Scavenging Ooze.
Oh my gosh.
And the Ooze comes in as a 3/3, so less susceptible to a barrage of Mayhem Devil activations.
Wow. And now this Pelt Collector has Trample, and Corey's not at a low life total. 15 is some life to play with. This is a great attack. I love this attack from Baumeister. Get aggressive.
Be aggressive. And yeah, that's
aggressive, I believe it goes.
Sure, you're the quote master here. I'll defer to you on all of that.
Wow, the quote master. Don't let that go to my head. I'll just start telling you things that aren't quotes.
The quote master general in here, in the booth. But yeah, that Pelt Collector getting a nice attack in, and for Tim, that Priest again, Corey's in a spot where one removal spell in conjunction with the Priest can clean up Corey's entire board. But he didn't have it last turn, so maybe you just get to cross your fingers and hope for this one.
And
now, one thing that is worth noting is right now, only 1 green mana open for Corey. So with those 2 foods from Tim, he can force that Familiar back into play if he's so inclined.
Right, just having the ability to pick that fight is huge. My goodness, look at this.
The second Mayhem Devil. Yeah, so now, this is going to be a bloodbath this turn.
Oh my gosh. With a Priest online as well.
Right, and so now...
Is Baumeister dead?
He's either dead or he's sure close to it.
I think it's
we see some triggers going at the Vivian, so it looks like Tim maybe has done the math and has come up short. But either way, he's going to have a dominating ball position coming out of this turn.
Right, this is a situation where rather than wasting a bunch of your rope time just doing a ton of math like that, where there is that variable of the Scavenging Ooze, instead you can just pick this sort of fight where you whittle down Baumeister's relevant resources.
Yeah, and you see a giant tower of Mayhem Devil triggers there. Spelling doom for Corey Baumeister. And, wow, Tim is going upstairs, not even trying to shoot down the Ooze. Like, he knows what's going on for the rest of this game.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. This is a situation where it's obvious that somebody is dead here. Just make it happen.
Down to 7, down to 6. Now First Level can rumble into combat as well if it needs to.
Right, this cat and this Priest with the oven up should actually be enough for lethal. Oh!
Just to remove any doubt, Noxious Grasp on the Scavenging Ooze takes that out of the way. And yeah, this game is going to end in Tim Milner's favor in short order here.
Right, this is one where Rakdos Sacrifice is going to do what it does best and just pick on the non-interactive creature deck.
And yeah, we see Corey hovering over those emotes. There
Cat,
it is.
Oven, Devils, face.
And yeah,